Good morning, evening, or afternoon, depending on what side of the pond you're on, and welcome to another special Team of the Month edition of Across the Pitch. My name is Phil Kennedy, and today I am joined by both Tony Robinson and Ross Davenport, as we're going to speak with the Vice Chairman and Chief Branding Officer of our Team of the Month Greenville Triumph. Welcome to the show, Doug Erwin. Nice to speak with you, Doug.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's great to chat with you here today. And like I mentioned in the intro, I have Ross and Tony. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thanks, Phil. As always.
Yeah, nice to be with you guys again. And I'm looking forward to speaking with Doug. We learned a lot there in our last episode with Ross about the Greenville Triumph. And I'm looking forward to getting into more detail with Doug today. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Doug, what we wanted to start off with was to get a little bit of your background. Now, I understand that from what I've read, soccer or football, depending on what you like to call it, is something that you first really got into back in about 2010. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your passion for the beautiful game?
For sure. So, I've grown up a huge sports fan of pretty much any sport since I was a kid. I played a lot of sports growing up, played baseball, played soccer, tennis, golf, a bunch of things. But 2010, you said it. I take you back in time to, I had just graduated college and had roomed for a couple years with two buddies of mine, one of whom was a big soccer fan, state champ in high school and all that. And yeah, my two roommates still had another year of college left. So they were hanging out over the summer, and I was on the job hunt, and the job hunt was pretty tough because we were in the middle of a recession. And so I ended up, it was fall before I found a job. So what did I do all of summer of 2010? I watched 2010 World Cup. We were waking up and watching every match. And when we weren't watching matches, we were playing World Cup on FIFA and just got really into it. And, had always kind of watched international soccer from afar and, a little bit of MLS here and there, but really just fell in love with the game then. And I've been following international soccer a lot since then. And, prior to starting this whole thing in Greenville, just enjoying soccer as a fan for what's been about a decade now.
Yeah, my story is kind of a lot like yours, where I'm a lifelong sports fan of, like you said, just about any other sport, American football, baseball, basketball, NASCAR, you name it, I watch them all. But it was really the 2006 World Cup that kind of sucked me in and really wanted me to get into this game. And then one thing that I had read, I believe it was when you said you attended your first, was it DC United game, that was really when the sport kind of overtook you. And I kind of had that same feeling when I went to my first Phoenix Rising game. And it is one of those things where you can fall in love with it on TV, but until you've actually been to a match, then it's just a whole different world. Yeah,
totally agree. And, the DC circumstance, it was kind of unique. I mean, that was, they're still playing in RFK Stadium. And, so you're in this kind of creaky, cavernous, old, I don't want to say falling apart, but let's say darn near falling apart stadium. So, not an ideal circumstance from a stadium standpoint to attend your first game, even with all the charms that RFK had. But, the crowd, while small, was so into it, and the fan experience, being a guy who grew up in the Southeast and going to Clemson where college football is king, that even more so than going to, say, an NFL game, the fan experience at a soccer game felt to me kind of like college football. And I'm sitting there during the game and I'm like, oh, I can get on board with this.
One thing I wanted just to touch on, you mentioned early on in the conversation, Doug, is, and we've had this debate on across the pitch, soccer or football. And obviously soccer is the term used, in the States to describe the game. And Ross told us about in the last episode how this worked into the naming of the club and your logo with the SC standing for not only soccer club but South Carolina. How much planning went into that process?
I would say it was pretty quick decision from us. As Ross probably said, I think the story we tell is, we're not above some low hanging fruit, and the low hanging fruit at SC and Soccer Club was right there. We're Southerners. We're blissfully ignorant about some stuff. So football is American football to us, and there was an amateur team in town that was going by football club. So all of those factors kind of led us towards Soccer Club, and we think it's just kind of what around the area is known. And I don't fault any club that goes by football club, but it felt like something to just own. And again, the FC is nice, and we haven't even really tapped into it all the way yet in terms of merchandise and some other things. But we really like the GTSC moniker.
Awesome. I was going to say, Doug, with this 2010 World Cup being your first sort of introduction, we won't be seeing vuvuzelas anytime soon at Legacy Early then, I hope.
Yeah.
I love those. I think I'm the only one, though.
I just remember watching the games and there being a constant buzz in the background. It's almost after a few games you got kind of used to it, but I do remember that.
That was how I knew soccer was on, though. It was perfect. I'd be 3 rooms away and hear the buzz. Like, the game started.
Well, maybe 10 years.
We had one or two vuvuzelas show up at a game at one point last year, and normally I am very accepting of noisemakers and stuff, but I went over those people and I was like, please don't start. Like, we can't be doing this, please.
So 10 years is not enough to forget about vuvuzelas. That's clear. Doug, other than obviously you had a couple of local pro teams already existing in Greenville, what other owners did you reach out to, when forming Greenville and getting things going to sort of really help you guys along the way?
Yeah, that's a great question. We leaned on a number of places. We talked to some people in Kansas City, just through some contacts. We talked to Atlanta United. We're fortunate to have one of our minority owners, Billy Webster, is good friends with Arthur Blank, and he said, hey, would love to call Arthur and have him host you guys down there and talk. So we were able to go down and spend a day with Atlanta United and talk to Darren Eagles, and Darren is just fantastic. And we talked to Charleston, and we really just got around as much as we could. We talked to Statesboro a lot too. Any advice was good advice, and it's something that we've tried to pass on in the 2 years or so since we've had this up and running. We're an open door if anyone wants to come talk to us as well. And I think it's really cool that kind of fraternity of teams, both new and old, that we like to share information. We had somebody in St. Louis, and now they're headed MLS, but a USL side at St. Louis, pretty much just said, numbers, anything you guys want to know, happy to pass it along. I'm happy to help because, I think we all realize that if we can help prop up another team, it's in the best interest of everybody.
And how is the relationship with the other local teams, the Swamp Rabbits and the Drive? And obviously, you are competing to a certain extent. Obviously, not this season, thank goodness. But how is the relationship with that? I remember when I worked for the Tennessee Smokies, we had the Ice Bears, a local ice hockey team. We had a pretty good relationship. We gave our employees tickets for each other and supported each other. We were just about far away enough. But how is the relationship with those other two teams?
It's good. And you talk about the cross promotion, how important that is. That's something that's kind of our next step in those relationships, is what can we do to directly help one another. But we're pretty fortunate. My dad and I have spent time working with the Drive, the baseball team. My dad was actually instrumental in developing the branding for the Drive, and good friends with The Drive's minority owner, and I spent some time working for and with the Drive. And then Chris Lewis, our president, used to be the president of the Swamp Rabbits. So that natural connection has helped a lot. And the Swamp Rabbits have gone through a couple ownership changes, and I know Chris has continued to keep in touch and kind of speak to his experience there to help give some context to the new owners. So it's something that's important. And you're all competing, indirectly for people's entertainment dollar, but at the same time, you're all working together to help raise the profile of Greenville as a sports town, because growing up, Greenville was baseball and that was it. We didn't have anything else. We had the AA affiliate for the Braves, and then they left. And at one point we didn't have any minor league sports here. So we're all trying to do what we can to help raise that profile as Greenville continues to grow.
So speaking of that kind of leads to what my next question was going to be. I would think in your part of the country that the biggest game in town would not be a pro sport, but that would of course be the Clemson football team. And one thing that we've done on the show is we've talked to, for instance, we had Paul Carton on, who's the manager of Warrington Town, which is traditionally more of a rugby place, or you need to take a place like Wigan, for instance, say that's more of a rugby town. So I mean, in South Carolina, I imagine it's probably Clemson Tigers football number 1, Clemson Tigers football number 2, Clemson Tigers football number 3. So how hard is it for you to put Greenville Triumph as number 4 on that list?
Well, it's funny. My dad and I are both Clemson grads, so we don't bow down to the Paul when it comes to Triumph stuff, but we sure respect the hell out of it. And we're season ticket holders for Clemson football, and we like to be able to go to those in the fall too. And it is a challenge. It's not unlike I'm sure what the Columbus Crew have dealt with for 20 some years being in the market with Ohio State, and I guess the Blue Jackets too, in Columbus. At the end of the day, the tail that wags the dog is Ohio State football. So it's certainly something that we recognize as people are passionate about that, and in the fall, what can we do with our home matches to try and avoid going up against those games, even if Clemson's on the road and South Carolina's on the road. I think college football Saturday is a state of mind more than anything in the South in the fall. So you'll see us in the fall, have some more Friday night or Sunday afternoon matches. But to us, it's encouraging because, again, there's that passion for sports. And as we continue to go on, what can we do to tie into that? How can we do things like have a Clemson alumni night and South Carolina alumni night? And so I don't know if we'll have South Carolina alumni night. That might pain my father not too much. But
I don't know if a lot of people in England would know this, but in the southern U.S., college football Saturday is every bit as big as Premier League Saturday is in England.
Definitely.
Phil, I just jump in here. I wanted to just sort of expand on the on one of the roles that you have in your title, Doug, is obviously Chief Brand Officer. And it's more so in North America, I think, is getting the brand correct. In England, you can get a startup team and getting the name of the team is usually centered around the location it's in. But the brand of a sports team in North America is so important, and to be have a name that's unique, to your area, and also doesn't conflict with any other name in pro sports. How much planning did you go into developing the name Triumph and the process you went through?
Yeah, that's a great question. It was something that I think we were all a little bit naive to just how in depth that process would be. We thought, optimistically, hey, we can get this done in about 2 months, and it ended up being about a 5-month thing. And And part of that was, just to what you spoke about is how do you find the balance between the traditions of soccer and the naming convention of soccer and, the American way of, having a fuzzy or furry mascot for everything, if you will. So a lot of it was rooted in, what is true to Greenville, what is true to upstate South Carolina. I think, when you look around and you see the brands that are successful, not just in America, but, worldwide, especially back in Europe, it's tying into that region. I think if you look around the NFL, you see plenty of names in just American sports in general that people don't understand, even if
Arizona Cardinals,
that's indigenous to the region. Yeah. Well, the Arizona Cardinals, like you got the Carolina Panthers and all that. And, it doesn't dovetail nicely. And I think for us, a lot of it was rooted in talking to people that live here, that have lived here for a while, and some that have just gotten to the area, and those that know the story of Greenville, and upstate South Carolina. That was huge for us. And I feel like there is so much fan pressure, and that's positive pressure that goes into these processes. We kind of stepped back and realized, hey, we need to slow this, and make sure we take the time to get it right. And like any of these processes go, I know that Washington former Redskins are under this process now. You start with a handful of names, or in our case, we started with 20, and you whittle that down, and 20 turns to 10, and 10 turns to 5. And for us, 5 turned into, I think, 3. And at one point it was kind of a coin flip for the 3, but then as we got further into it and started to kind of focus group those 3, the answer really came out without us having to force a decision, because again, you saw people not just necessarily fall in love with the name, because not everybody fell in love with the name Triumph, but even the ones that didn't fall in love, they got it. And I think that was huge for us, as they say, well, if I was doing it, I would name it something different. But man, you're right. Greenville and upstate South Carolina, it is about Triumph. So
I'm glad that you brought up about the Washington football team, because that's a question that a lot of people have come to me with. Why are the Redskins taking so long to find a new name? And you just kind of laid it out right there. It's not a 2 or 4 week process. It's a months-long process. It's finding that name that works. It's finding a name that everybody agrees on, and then not having that name already be taken.
Right. Well, and, even that everybody agrees upon, that's not a guarantee, because it's kind of funny that unintentionally now, my dad has been part of 2 sports brands in Greenville, neither of which ended in an S. And I remember when the Greenville Drive branding was unveiled, there were people that loved it and there were people that dragged it through the mud, but it was authentic. And once people had a little bit of time with it and understood, now it's something that I think is pretty universally embraced. And that background helped give us the confidence, because again, we didn't go with just the Greenville Soccer Club or Greenville Football Club. So we were skewing the tradition a bit, but we also didn't go all the way to the new American name that's, the Wolves or the Tigers or something like that. So we knew it was potentially going to take a little time to grow on some people.
Can you share with us the other 2 names that were made the final 3?
I was going to say the same thing. I don't know if you've even said it, Doug. Have you?
No, I'm gonna keep that. Maybe down the road, I think we'll share some sketches and stuff. But I will say this, that the thing that was surprising to me was that most of the names did not end in S. We kind of fell in love with this singular, and we talk about the Triumph in this case is not just a noun referring to the team. Triumph is a directive of we must triumph, we all triumph. And there were other things along that line and that were in consideration. I would say the USL Championship in Birmingham team in Birmingham, the Legion, they were close to something we had. It was not Legion, but there was something in that similar vein. And now I'm kind of glad we didn't go with that because it was a little similar. But I think that the more easily, I'm going to make a word up, mascotable names tended to fall off the list early on in our revisions. We wanted to be a little more unique, and I think we got that.
That's something that really started with the Miami Heat and the Orlando Magic NBA teams in the late 1980s. I think they were really the first professional sports franchises, one, to not end in an S, and two, to have their name be a verb. And since then, I think it's a trend that's really kind of taken off. Before that, you just had the Red Sox or the White Sox, and that's still kind of an S.
Well,
exactly.
There's a name that they've just popped up in the NHL now out in Seattle. They've come up with the name Seattle Kraken. So technically it doesn't end in an S, but I'm not sure that's a name that I can readily sort of get behind, or it's one that's going to have to grow on. But I certainly think the name Greenville Triumph, it seems to just have a nice flow to it. It's got a nice sound to it. The thought process and the definition behind the word triumph, I think is great. So it's not just you picked a name. You went through a process and it represents the area. So I personally like the name. I think it's unique and it works.
Yeah, well, thank you. The one thing, guys, that you'll appreciate that we knew was inevitable and we had to just get past was the first 2 months of the season. When we would lose a match, and let's go back to the topic of low hanging fruit. Every single writer for an opposing team or opposing team's home market would say, Greenville does not triumph, falls 0-1. And the fifth or sixth time you're like, yeah, bud, we get it. But they've all gotten that out of their system. So that's been good.
Tony, I would think I was going to just make a quick comment that Tony, I thought you would be on board with the Kraken because it's a fake animal from a movie, just like the Raptors. So you should be used to that up in Toronto.
I'll have you know they're still the defending world champions are the Raptors. So and looking good so far. But no, I think it's another reason I don't like Kraken because I don't like rum, and so that's another reason for not liking the name. I like the color scheme, and that's something we talked about with Ross when he was explaining the color scheme. Did you have other options to look at, or was it just a natural fit to go with the colors that you picked?
That's another great question. So funny enough, going into the branding process when we engaged the creative design firm that helped us come up with it, we said, listen, we've only got one thing that we know for sure in this process, and that's that we want the colors to be blue and green, or green blue. And part of that was rooted in obviously Greenville is Greenville because it's green, and surprisingly enough, there hadn't been a minor league team to feature green as a main color since a very short-lived NBDL basketball team that lasted one season in the first season back in the early 2000s. And they featured a much different green and blue, kind of more a neon green and a royal blue. But we thought those two colors went together well, and we wanted to own that color. We thought that was unique, and there weren't a ton of teams across the USL that were utilizing that. And I think St. Louis is the only other one. They use kind of a darker green, but yeah. So that was, it was an easy thing for us as we started the branding. As we said, make blue and green work. Now I'm not going to tell you what shades of blue or what shades of green. I'll leave that to you guys. And they took it from there. And we didn't even consider going into the process that we would net out with really, in effect, 4 colors, 2 different greens and 2 different blues. But I think it's worked out great.
I've seen on the internet. I've seen the home uniforms, and I like the color scheme and the way it works together. So I think again you've hit the ball out of the park with that one. So, and it's as I said, it's earlier on, it's so important to get those things correct. You want the right color scheme, uniform, and the name, because if you get those two things right, from a branding point of view, you're well on your way, aren't you, Doug?
Yeah, definitely. I think even more so than the brand, obviously the fans are concerned about the kits, and what are the kits going to look like, and the second we get done unveiling the brand, that's the question, and you're like, all right, guys, slow down, give us a little bit of time. But that's such, even more so than the brand. Sometimes the kits are such a tangible point for fans to have and own, that you want to wear that with pride and know that represents the city and the region. So I think we were really pleased with how it turned out. And, working with Nike might not give you some of the customization options. I'll say that some of the other clubs that work with smaller firms have, but at the same time, we all love a nice clean look, and that crest with the Nike swoosh on a green kit is tough to beat.
Yeah, I agree.
And that will be, I hear, Doug, I was just saying we're debuting the third jersey on Saturday. We
are, yeah. Gosh, I didn't think it would be making its on-field debut half a year after we unveiled it, but
right.
Here we are, 2020. So we're just doing the best we can.
Well, looking forward to it. And obviously, managerially, you guys made probably the biggest managerial splash, I would say, in League One so far with the hiring of John Harkes. Those of you, those of us out there that don't know the story, maybe you can bring us into how that ended up happening. And also, we've obviously seen John on TV for years, whether it's on the field or doing media stuff. Maybe get us into some of the things we don't know about John Harkes as well.
Yeah, Ross, great question. It's funny because when that started to happen, I feel like I felt bad kind of, showing John my age when I was like, people are like, how do you know John Harkes? I'm like, oh, he's a broadcaster. He was on the 2010 World Cup. That was my, I knew his name from the playing days before, but that was, the most quote unquote FaceTime I had with him before getting to meet him was on 2010 World Cup, working with Ian Dark and stuff. But it was just fascinating how it all came together, and it was such a series of coincidences with John having ties to the upstate, with his eldest daughter Lauren co-captaining the women's team at Clemson, and his son Ian playing at Wake Forest, and now their youngest Lily playing at Elon. Familiar with the Carolinas and area, familiar with Clemson, familiar with Greenville, and he and his wife Cindy love the area, as a lot of people do. They get to come experience it, and our team president Chris Lewis, got to meet him at a Clemson women's soccer match, and they started talking. And at the time, John had just come off of coaching Cincinnati to a really incredible debut season in the championship. So we knew that the coaching pedigree was there, and I mean, John's coached for everyone in American soccer you could hope to coach for, and at pretty much every level. And John's Rolodex is impressive as anyone's when it comes to the soccer world. So we knew, in addition to the great playing experience and coaching experience, the thing that John could do is really lead and build a program and get guys of great character, of great talent to come to Greenville and allow us to get out of the gate hot. So which we were able to do. So it's been great. It's been crazy. I think there's still pinch me moments along there. And, Ross, as you said, he's a guy who's familiar behind a microphone and a camera, and it does really well for us around fans and around the media and stuff. And behind the scenes, his preparation is incredible. But, you asked what are some other things. He's also the class clown, and he'll admit to it. He does such a great job keeping the guys laughing and keeping the environment loose. Just being a goofball. I think we filmed we filmed him mic'd up at the first ever tryout, and there were hours of footage that we couldn't use that were ridiculous, and I hope that we can release that someday. I keep joking that I've got it as blackmail for him, but it's the kind of stuff that over the grind of a long season, the duality of his intensity, experience, and preparation matched up with his natural sense of humor really keeps the guys fresh and light, which is fun to watch.
Would you say he gives you, with the hiring of John, would that give you instant credibility? And also, would you say he's the face of the club from a brand's perspective?
Wait, you mean I'm not the face of the club?
The other face.
Yeah.
As a ball boy, yes.
You're right. Yes, Ross. No, you're exactly right. I mean, that was part of why we felt so strongly about making the hire, and not wanting to make a splash to pat ourselves on the back, but the credibility that came with that. As you're trying to build a brand and make your way in a market that has minor league sports but isn't used to professional soccer. This is really the first go at full professional soccer. You might not know who the hell the Greenville Triumph are, but you've likely heard of John Harkes, whether you're a soccer fan or not. If you're of a certain age and you can remember back to his playing days, and if you're a player, we thought, that's looking to get involved in this new league, you're certainly going to gravitate to a name like that, and the pedigree that he had, and it was huge for us, and it was important. As we looked at building out a plan for ramping up to be a team. It's just like a lot of these rebuilds that you see in sports. A team might say, hey, we're tearing down and rebuilding, and this is a 3-4 year process to get back to where we want to be. But then they get one draft pick or one free agent signing that accelerates that timetable. John was the kind of guy that, as we looked at building out things, John accelerates that timetable. So expectations come with that, and they're healthy expectations. And I think for us, it was important to show Greenville that we're committed to this, and we're committed to not just putting something on the field for fans to enjoy. We're committed to winning too. And thankfully, we were able to deliver on that pretty quickly with a finals appearance, and hopefully some more hardware this season.
That's a great way to go into one of my other questions that I had. I wanted to ask you, what is the kind of long-term plan? Does Greenville Triumph have like a 5 or a 10-year plan for where they want to be, both on the field and in the community? What are some of the goals that you have for the club, both short and long term?
Yeah, and great question, Phil. I think for us, the goal that's staring everybody right in the face is a permanent stadium. We're honored to play where we do at Legacy Early College, and we think we've constructed a stadium, a temporary stadium, really, that is about one of the best experiences in League One right now. And that we feel good about that, but we also know that long term we want to have our own place, or be in a place that we're the primary tenant of. And we know that there's a lot that comes with that, again, in terms of player and talent attraction, and certainly revenue potential, and potential to host more events than just Triumph soccer matches, to get some exhibitions, maybe do something like Charleston, South Carolina has done historically, where they get a couple MLS clubs in preseason to come down. And that's important for us as we look to the next, handful of years, is to get a plan for that. And then also from a training facility standpoint, we've got a great relationship with the local college in town, Bob Jones, and train and have our own dedicated facility out there. But long term, we'd like to have a facility with multiple fields that hopefully allows us to dabble into the youth component a little bit. And I think more so than that, it's, what can we do to help increase visibility for the brand? And is that a League Two side? Is it a women's team? I don't know exactly, but I know that everything's on the table for us as we evaluate things.
It sounds to me like most of your goals have to do one with growing the infrastructure, and then also with growing the youth and academy system, and that's what the brand is looking to build out on. Because one of the biggest things, and I'm sure you hear this every day, that we hear from fans, especially in Europe or even in the U.S. for that matter, is about promotion and relegation. And one of the hardest things to explain to people is that some of the smaller clubs, especially in a market like Greenville, aren't necessarily looking to get promoted. That's not a goal of the club necessarily, to be in the USL Championship or the MLS, but your goal is to make your team be the best League One club it can be a part of the community, build out the youth and development program, like you said, maybe add on a League Two team, which is the fourth tier, which is semi-pro here. So there is a lot more to it than just trying to get promoted to the next level, which is something that for a market like Greenville and a way that things are spread out in this country, it's not like people are going to drive from Atlanta for an MLS game in Greenville. I mean, it's just that some markets are only going to ever support a third-tier team.
Yeah, and do we feel like maybe we could be at the championship level? Sure. I think from a market size standpoint, we're one of the larger, if not the largest market in League One once you take out the MLS reserve sides. But you talk about the pro relegation. That debate obviously is the hot button topic of American soccer, and we like to say we can't cure all those ills. We just want to play some good soccer. But at the same time, if that was something that ever came into existence, even if it was just between the championship and League One, we would welcome it. We would love to be able to try that. I know it's easy for us to say, being at the lower end of pro soccer. Well, of course we'd welcome it, because initially it would just be promotion for us. So, but yeah, I'm going to be fascinated to see what direction things go in with that. But we can only control what we can control, and as you said, our goals are to build out the best possible League One side that we can. And if some other opportunities arise, we're excited to welcome those as well.
I just want to change direction for you for a second. I was just reading today that apparently I guess your next home game, you're going to be able to have fans attending somewhere in the neighborhood of up to 2,000. Is that correct, Doug?
Yeah, that was something that just came through for us at the end of last week from the governor's office, and it's something we're very excited about. And in addition to being excited about it, it's something that we know that we bear a lot of responsibility in bringing fans back. It's not just something where it's hand out a ticket and just give them a pat on the butt and send them in the door. We know that there's a lot of social responsibility with this, and that's why we felt confident in bringing fans back, is because we've been working since March on what a potential return in 2020 for fans would look like, and how we could do it safely for everyone that attends, safely for our players, our staff, our vendors. So for us, we feel really confident about the plan we've put in place with masks and socially distanced seating and limited capacity in things like vendor food lines and merchandise and all the sanitary procedures that we have in place. We feel like we're ready to do it and do it safely. And I'll say that it was a little bit of a blessing in disguise to be able to have our first two matches closed and to be able to at least try out the procedures that we already were going to have in place from the technical side, so that we felt comfortable enough that, hey, here we are for our third home match. Now we can layer on a limited number of fans.
Yeah, logistically, there's a lot of work. I mean, it's not just like you say, you just open the door and sell some tickets. I mean, the logistics part of it must take some planning. And, as I say, the eyes are on you when you do something like this. So we wish you success. And it certainly will be nice to have some fans in the stadium, not only for them, for the team and for the players. Just to have that atmosphere when you have the crowd there is, I think we're all agree that we've watched so many sports without fans in attendance. It's just not the same.
Yeah, one thing I was going to ask, Doug, is have you talked to the players just about how they felt differently without the fans and just how it has affected them on the field?
Yeah, I think it's definitely unusual. I've not gotten to speak at length with them about it, but from the general comments, and I think this is something that we've seen watching the MLS's back tournament as well, is it's harder to get and maintain momentum. In the MLS,
oh, for sure.
I think what you noticed was a lot of goals, or somebody goes up 1-0 and then they concede a goal 2 minutes later. You don't get to ride that wave of, if you've got a home goal, the crowd's going crazy and everything. So I know it's a little tougher for the guys to get in a rhythm. But at the same time, I think that there is something to be said for being able to communicate a little better, I'm sure. But at the same time, I know the guys want to have crowds back, and so far through our 4 matches, I think we've only had one that had fans, and that was at Madison, and that was even kind of a unique scenario because it wasn't in Madison; it was limited capacity. So this will be the first time there have been fans in attendance for us since late February when we scrimmaged Charlotte Independence. So I know the guys are excited for that, and just hopefully to get an early goal on the board and be able to rely on the crowd to help you to 3 points.
Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to Saturday. Obviously, first time on local TV as well. With the fans back and the new unis, it should be an exciting time against a team that, potentially, depending on the result on Wednesday night, you could be up close to us.
Yeah, it's certainly a big match. I think, when we were honing in on last week's match against Tormenta, we thought, boy, this is the really critical match for us. And now, no, it's 2 really critical matches in a row. And I know that John's big directive before the pandemic, when we said, what are your goals for this season? He said, I want to go undefeated at Legacy. We want to take those points at home that are out there. So that's the goal. And we're a quarter of the way there. But we really need to get 3 more this Saturday.
Yeah, for sure.
Before we wrap up, I just, obviously this is the league is young in as far as infancy is concerned. Where do you see the league next year in 2021, Doug, in the way of growth, or do you see any teams coming in, or is it going to stay the same, or how do you see things developing for next season?
Tony, that's a good question, and I think that my answer might have been different 6 months ago. But now it's kind of more of a boy, I don't know, because what I would assume, and this is not me talking to the league or anything, is I would assume that some teams that were thinking about coming in for 21 might now be coming in for 22, kind of like you're seeing with the MLS expansion clubs getting pushed back a year. I know that they've had that the league has had a lot of conversations with a couple of markets specifically about coming in and coming in soon. So I'm going to be interested to see what happens. I think for us, I think the next step in the league growth, I was talking to my dad about this the other day, is, look, we want more bus trips as much as the next team because it's more friendly on our budget. But from a league growth perspective, what I'd really love to see is more West Coast teams to come online. We want to. Tucson's got it worse off than almost any of us in terms of travel right now, and I know that once we get to a point where we can kind of split into an Eastern and a Western conference, boy, then then you're really starting to regionalize that travel a little more and push the snowball down the hill a little bit more and get people interested in coming. So I hope we can add a couple clubs next year. And then I think 22 is probably going to be a huge year for the league where you could see us adding, 4 or 6 teams in one season, hopefully.
Do you see some of the MLS2 teams dropping down from the championship?
That's hard to say because, some have obviously, but there are some that are steadfast and they want to remain at the championship. But at the same time, from an expense standpoint, the expenses are a little more friendly in League One. I don't see why teams wouldn't. It's a fascinating experiment this year to watch Fort Lauderdale play in our league because they are the first club to come in that is an expansion side in 2 leagues at the same time with the reserve side in League One and MLS. So, what kind of precedent does this set for the Sacramentos and Charlottes, St. Louis's when they get ready to come in? I don't know, but well, and the other thing you have this year is, you've got a very historic MLS side in New England Revolution just launching in 2 teams. So I think what you're more likely to see in the short term is some of those clubs that don't have reserve sides yet playing professionally to come straight into League One. I know Columbus is one that comes to mind, and Chicago. I know Chicago's had an alliance with a couple League One clubs, but I would think they would come in. But ultimately, it'll be interesting to see what the fate of the reserve sides are because we as an independent team, we like the voice of independent clubs in the league, and we want to make sure we grow with independent clubs too. But as a marketing person, I love being able to say that we've got New England Revs too come into town and OCB and Fort Lauderdale and stuff. So I like the balance that we have, and I hope it to grow.
Do you think that we'll see more USL Championship teams have a development side in League One, or do you think Phoenix and Tucson is a unique situation?
I would think that we would see that. I think that might be a little longer of a process. I think once you get to the point where MLS closes up for expansion, and it seems to be, coming up towards that cliff now, given the number of franchises they're layering on, I think you'll start to see some of those clubs. You look at someone the size of Sacramento or St. Louis. Imagine Sacramento's not coming to MLS and championships as high as they're going to go for right now. Given how big that organization is, and once more of these USL championship teams start to have stadium builds, think about it. I mean, part of the reason that Charlotte's getting an MLS team is, David Tepper, the Panthers owner, wants to be able to program more nights in that stadium. So as you get more championship clubs in their own stadium, it wouldn't shock me to see more of them get into either having a reserve side in League One or potentially having a women's side too, to be able to program more nights.
Now, you did bring up St. Louis, and what I've been reading is that it seems like there's some question to whether St. Louis is still going to be around as a USL side next year. Have you heard anything about that, or is that something that kind of stays at the championship?
Yeah, no, I've not heard anything about that actually, and it's interesting. You would hope that they'd be able, just from a player continuity standpoint, to play and not take a year off from the championship. But again, I know that COVID's thrown a huge wrench into things, and they probably weren't planning on having to push back a year. So I'll be curious to see what the next move is there.
Yeah, it seems like this has just kind of thrown everything up to the air. And Doug, we've taken up about an hour of your time today. We really appreciate it, and we don't want to take up too much more. I know, Tony, you said that was your last question. Ross, did we have anything that you hadn't gotten to yet?
No, just want to say thanks to Doug for allowing me to be their color guy these last couple of seasons, and being the only team in League One to have a 2-man booth. So hopefully that'll change next year. I think that a lot of teams perhaps would benefit from having the second man in the booth, but it's been fun so far.
Yeah, thanks, Ross. We enjoy having you, and we spread the gospel of a 2-man booth to every team that we can. So I really hope that some others continue to listen and hopefully add that on.
Well, we love listening to Ross on the broadcast, and I've got a Together We Triumph scarf hanging on my wall. So I wish all the best of luck to you for the rest of the season, and hopefully take that one step further and lift the big trophy at the end of the season.
Yes, please. Phil, Tony, Ross, appreciate you guys having me on, and I appreciate all you guys do to help promote soccer.
Yeah, continued success, and I appreciate the time. A pleasure speaking to you, and again, I've learned more about the team. So this is a good thing we're having for the team of the month, because I always like to expand my limited focus, and I'm learning more about Greenville Triumph every day. So continued success.
Thank you very much. Glad to hear it.
Thank you, Doug. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Cheers.
You all too.
Cheers.
Cheers.